Okay, thank you everyone. I came here about 4 years ago and I had a presentation on Agile, and I know some of you that were already there, and I hope I remember more of you that were there previously as well. At least 4 or 5 people I know that were there at that time as well. So my name is Prakash Petanpur. I've been working in Cisco for about 18 years, and I left Cisco last year. I'll talk about some of the stuff that we did. That work is also covered here, the experiences from there. I was an engineering leader, then I also did a lot of agile transformation across Cisco there. And then we did the entire business transformation, digital transformation, and our group was responsible for actually acquiring AppDynamics into Cisco. And that experience I'm also going to talk about in terms of what we did in terms of transforming Cisco to be completely digital, digital transformation, and we used many of the techniques that I'm going to discuss here today. I also bring in some of the learnings from my work at Stanford, where I took the Stanford Innovation and Entrepreneurship classes, and also their LEAD program, Learn, Engage, Accelerate and Disrupt program. Between the two courses, two programs, I took about 17 MBA related classes. Very good experience, and some of that we applied both in Cisco, and also now I'm applying it in the startup that I'm there, Smart Home Sentry. We are located in Plug and Play, and that's where I've used some of the techniques from all these transformations that I'm going to talk about. And we also are involved in Agile IT organization. I know some people here are also part of that organization. We do digital transformation, business transformation. We work with companies. And this Friday, this Saturday, we have an all-day workshop. David, do you want to say where it is, when it is?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, that's one of the hands-on workshop on SAFe, scale that. Thank you very much, Prakash. That's one of the hands-on. I'm David. Nice to meet you, everybody. That's one of the hands-on scaled agile workshop. You're going to go through PI planning, program increment planning, integrating agility from across the organization, from finance to business marketing, IT, definitely. And they're going to have some hands-on exercise. So it's going to be this Saturday in Sunnyvale. Take a look at our calendar event. It's at InnoWorld. Excellent. I'm going to be there. Thank you.
Actually, what you get today is a preview of what we are going to do on Saturday. This is just a brief overview, and we will have all the actual workshop and actual hands-on work on Saturday. So this is just going to be an overview here. I'm also, I have a lot of Scrum certifications, and I'm also SAFe consultant certified. So I just wanted to bring that up because some of that I discuss here as well. All right. Before we get on the agenda, I just wanted to find out how many of you work as program managers in your organization? Okay, a small number. How many of you work as Agile coach or Scrum Master or any role like that in your organization? Okay. Okay. What do others do? Not program manager, Scrum Master, but what other roles? Engineering roles, I guess? Okay? So,
this is actually an excellent opportunity for you to engage them into real agile work and mentality and mindset.
yeah.
How we incorporate both technical and non-technical and business mind into our practice to create more value.
So that's what I was going to bring up on, in the sense that when you talk about business transformation, it's usually very hard to connect the lower level actual work that we are doing in execution to how the strategy fits. So this presentation is more about what do you do about the strategy at the highest level, how do you trickle it down through the organization, through various mapping mechanisms, through value stream mapping and others, and bring it down to engineering organizations for a digital transformation and applying Agile, DevOps, scaled Agile, and all these techniques to make things happen. So that's the purpose of this presentation, and that's what I've told here in many words. We'll look at some of the success factors, why business transformation is required in this day and age, what's business transformation, what's digital transformation, how business transformation is enabled by digital transformation, and then to enable digital transformation, how Agile, DevOps, and scaled Agile are contributing. That's what we're going to talk about. So we'll start with the highest level from strategy perspective, a business model canvas, customer experience journey mapping, value proposition canvas, all of those ones. We'll talk about that. What are all the innovation opportunities? What technology that's driving us to go through digital transformation? And then how do we generate value from the end customer perspective, and how do we connect it with lower levels? And we'll walk through a successful implementation example. I worked in Cisco for about 18 years, and in the last few years, I worked in various areas in embedded systems, network management, and then cloud infrastructure, cloud applications, and finally in a group which was doing application performance management. And our group was the one that was responsible for acquiring AppDynamics into Cisco. But the work that we did, which was about a year or so, where we walked through the whole process that we talk about here, it became very successful, and that's how we got the credibility to bring in AppDynamics into the organization. So it's a success story, and we'll talk about that in this example. And then there's a summary and a wrap-up. Feel free to ask questions. No need to wait until the end. Let's engage in some conversations and understand what's required. So let's look at why business transformation. What's driving business transformation? Sorry, this may be a little eye chart. It's a little bit more detailed, but you all have heard about all these digitally native successful companies such as Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, Amazon Marketplace, all of these ones. They brought up their organization in a successfully digital way from the ground up, and they built the digital marketplaces where they built the platforms that match buyers and sellers, enabling easier, faster, and cheaper outcomes, right? So that's a success story, and if you want to replicate such success story, you need to transform your organization into digital. Similarly, direct to customer, you've seen digital platforms that cut out intermediaries, Dollar Shave Club. How many of you have heard of Dollar Shave Club? Yeah. So it's $1 billion company.
No, did it go off? Okay, try now.
It's a $1 billion company that got acquired by Unilever, and they became successful overnight, kind of thing. It's a digitally native company. Tesla, there are no dealers, no car dealers at all. They ship. You can order the car and they ship it directly to you. These are all new ways of delivering programs, delivering customer experiences. UPS, 3D printing, Tesla, all of these other companies, Zelle, how many of you have heard of Zelle? Person-to-person payment services, right? So the CEO of Zelle had come to Stanford for one of our programs. In fact, he was one of our colleagues in that program and in the lead program. And he talked about how he built that organization, how he convinced Wells Fargo to initially invest, and then how Chase bought the company, how he built that company. It's surprising, it's amazing actually. In US is a unique financial environment compared to any other country. There is no central bank, and there are some 7,000 or 8,000 different banks in US, and these people had to bring the financial mechanisms from all these different banks to enable this person-to-person payment services. And that kind of a transformation was possible because they built the organization that way to digitally take the finance information. So similarly, there are all these other areas that are very important. So basically what I'm trying to tell is that for being successful in this new environment with all these new technologies that are coming in, we need to be digitally equipped. Digital transformation is necessary, and that's why this topic is very appropriate for conversation right now. So business transformation means digital transformation, as we talked about. Software is the backbone for all the work that we do, especially in this digital environment. What happens is that technology is driven by CIOs independent of the customer experiences, and the CMOs, Chief Marketing Officers, drive the customer experience independent of technology. They need to come together and to have a successful business transformation, and that's what we'll talk about here, how that's possible. And it's not that you do transformation in one sector and ignore all others. It has to be decentralized. It has to be distributed across the organization, and everybody needs to be part of that. Bridging the gap between definition and delivery, wish versus reality, that's where rubber hits the road, and this is very important from a transformation perspective. And this is a huge opportunity. Last year it was $1.2 trillion. And this year it's even more. It's growing at a rate of 20%. And so this opportunity cannot be missed. And it's growing even for next year as well. So we all, being part of that ecosystem, we need to, it's in our best interest to be part of this transformation, to drive these transformations in our organizations. So what's important for transformation is that there has to be holistic employee experience, supplier and partner experience, and customer experience. If they're in silos, it's not going to be successful. And this slide is more talking about how do you get that holistic employee experience. A digital workplace hub is the key to make sure that there is a good mobile management strategy. So employees can work with devices, any of the devices and applications of their choice from anywhere to make to work with the company so that they are fully mobile and fully equipped to do whatever they need to do. There needs to be integrated employee engagement strategy. It's amazing to find out many of the companies that are not digitally native, their employee engagement levels are very, very low. Just by bringing all the experiences together, employee engagement needs to be driven higher, then only the productivity of employees will be higher. Providing collaborative and coherent workspace is another very important aspect for bringing that holistic experience. So that's what we are going to talk about. How do we make that happen? This is more, I'll cover less of the employee experiences here. We'll cover more on the customer experience because that's what drives the revenue for the company. So this is a logical break point. Any questions that you guys have on what were your expectations and what do you want to see more, talk about? What I'm going to go through now is a series of steps on making sure that the business transformation is achieved through digital transformation and mapping it down to Agile, DevOps, and scaled Agile frameworks. Any questions? Is that what you expected to hear today?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me go back one slide. You had an item on the legacy IT and going from legacy. I wonder if you could touch a little more on that.
Yeah, so typically IT is considered like a cost center. People do just minimally what's required for getting things going from the technology perspective. That's the legacy IT challenge, that it's no longer a cost center. In fact, IT takes the center stage to drive this whole digital transformation. So we don't want it to be treated in companies as a legacy entity. That's what I meant there. Okay. All right. So here are the 4 steps that are key for a successful transformation. We need to have a strategy. How do we do the transformation? Make sure that people and processes are transformed, and then that trickles down into lean and agile transformation throughout the organization from the software artifacts perspective. So at the strategy level, we look at the lean business model canvas. How many of you are familiar with business model canvas? Okay, a couple of them. So we are going to show a little bit more, talk a little bit more about that. That's at the highest level. Then we go down to some other frameworks such as the value proposition canvas. How do you do customer experience journey mapping, and then various other frameworks that are critical for driving these transformations in your organization, and then we'll map it down to lower levels. Also, there are a lot of digital transformation opportunities with the new technologies coming in. We'll have a brief discussion about that, and then how do you do the value stream mapping, and then map it down to scaled agile framework, trains, teams, backlogs, etc. Agile release trains and all those things. So that's the agenda for rest of this presentation. So this is a business model canvas. Every company that is considering what needs to be done as a new offering or as a new company needs to look at these 9 building blocks, starting with customer segments and the value proposition in terms of product, what we are going to give, how we are going to deliver, what are the relationships with the customer, And for that, what the company needs to do in terms of key activities and what resources are required, and then what are the partnerships. The right side is what brings the revenue to the organization, and the left side is the cost involved in building the organization. Now, we all know that revenue should exceed the cost to make money in the company, and this analysis actually will tell whether you have a profitable business or not. And then, of course, once you do that, you can have various metrics and analyze what's happening as you're executing. I'll have a very short video of the person that brought up this business model canvas first time, Alexander Osterwalder. He came to Stanford and he gave a presentation there. It's on YouTube, and I just taken a short clip from him. Just listen to that, and then he succinctly tells what it is, and it's a good intro.
Now, what is this language about? It's about 9 building blocks. 9 building blocks that allow you to describe, design every business model you can imagine. Ultimate possibilities, thousands of ultimates. So let's watch a little movie, 2 minutes, that will explain what the business model canvas is. So if I explain it, it'll probably take 15 minutes, so that's why I made a movie, so you can get a quick overview of the business model canvas.
An organization's business model can be described with 9 basic building blocks: your customer segments, your value proposition for each segment, the channels to reach customers, customer relationships you establish, the revenue streams you generate, the key resources and key activities you require to create value, the key partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas. This is what we call the business model canvas, a tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. This includes simple users and paying customers. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. Channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. Customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with your customers. The revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. Key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. Then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business model in one image. This works for startup entrepreneurs just as well as for the most senior executives.
So, 9 building blocks, pretty straightforward. The individual building blocks are not new. Probably most of you know every piece of it, right? If you looked at business a little bit, you have an idea of what this is. But the important thing here is that we have all 9 on one slide or on one poster if we print it out. And that we understand how they all fit together. So we get the big picture understanding. Not just the product. For the engineers in the room, great products are becoming a commodity. It's the combination between great products and a great business model that's going to keep you ahead in competition in the coming decade.
So, you saw about, that's okay, I'll keep it far so that.
Oh, okay.
you can have, there are a few more videos.
All right.
So you can see that a business model is to make sure that the product fits with the strategy of the company, right? Now, you also want the product to fit with the customer as well. How do you map those things? Those are also important aspects. We will look at a few other canvas for doing that as well. But before we go, any questions on the business model canvas? This is something that we'll do in the workshop as well. We can take a real example and brainstorm through all these individual sections and see people's ideas. You can put them in each of the areas. What is your product offering? Who are your customers? How do you map them? Through what channels? What are the relationships? So we'll go through all these 9 blocks as part of the workshop as well, right? So any questions on business model canvas? Now pay close attention to 2 of the blocks here, the value proposition for your product and the customer segments, right? So we will look at a little more carefully in those 2 blocks with what is called a value proposition canvas. So that's the value proposition canvas, which talks about the product's benefits and features and what kind of experience it gives, and what are the customers' wants, needs and fears. What are their experiences? What do they want? What is their current experience? What do they want it in the future? That kind of thing. We'll look at that. And then we'll drill more deep into what the customer experiences are throughout the life cycle of their interaction with the company, with the product. So it will become a little bit more clear when I show you the example, what we did in our product for application performance management, where Cisco had a traditional way of doing things. We had to revolutionize every part of the life cycle, including from making things aware, how they consider this product, how they purchase, what is the actual product, how do you work with that through the life cycle. All of those things, we'll go through that in that example, but that's the customer experience journey mapping, and we'll look at how that is done as well as in part in the workshop on Saturday. So to be successful, we need to continually engage and listen to the customer, because we had to build thin slices of vertical slices of functionality so you can deploy quickly to the customer, bring it back for get the feedback from them, make corrections, course corrections, learn continually and pivot or enhance your product and take it to the customer again. So it's very important that we do that. And of course, when we are applying new technologies, that's another important thing that we do in embracing Agile, is to build architecture spikes and infrastructure components so that you can get the features to the market quickly. We cannot spend a lot of time in building just infrastructure and architecture. We need to create a runway so that you can simultaneously or very soon start building the features on that runway, right? That's the architectural runway. And the UX runway, you define your UX capabilities, and then immediately following in a sprint or two later, you have the capability developed as well. So how do you do all that is something that I've given in different presentations before. Those are all the typical Agile related techniques that we adopt to make sure that we are very proactive in responding to customers' needs. So we'll look at the 2 frameworks, the value proposition canvas and the customer experience journey in the next 2 slides, and then I'll stop for some questions. if you have. So Strategizer is the company that came up with this value proposition canvas, and so I brought a video from them to for you guys to listen. By the way, these are all in YouTube, so if you want, you can always listen to that, and I'll have these slides published as well, and so you will see the link down there. You can use that.
Every day, companies design products and services to improve their customers' lives. But 72% of new product and service innovations fail to deliver on expectations. This means that customers don't care about 7 out of 10 new products introduced to the market. It doesn't have to be this way. Just like you create value for your business with the business model canvas, there is in fact a tool to intentionally visualize, design, and test how you create value for customers. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas. The Value Proposition Canvas is composed of 2 parts, the customer profile and the value map. With the customer profile, you describe the jobs your customers try to get done. Jobs can be functional, like getting from A to B, social, like impressing friends and colleagues, or emotional, like gaining peace of mind. You highlight your customers' pains, which annoy customers while trying to get a job done. Pains and negative outcomes that customers hope to avoid, like dissatisfaction with existing solutions and challenges, frustrations, risks, or obstacles related to performing the job. And you outline customer gains, which describe how customers measure the success of a job well done. Gains are positive outcomes that customers hope to achieve, like concrete results, benefits, and even aspirations. Use the customer profile to visualize, test, and track your understanding of the people or companies you intend to create value for. It's a map that becomes clearer the more you learn about your customers. The second part of the canvas is the value map. With it, you list the products and services your value proposition builds on. You describe in which way these products, services, and features are pain relievers, how they eliminate, reduce, or minimize pains customers care about, making their life easier. And you outline in which way they are gain creators, how they produce, increase, or maximize outcomes and benefits that your customers expect, desire, or would be surprised by. The value map makes explicit how your products and services relieve pains and create gains. Use it to design, test, and iterate your value proposition until you figure out what resonates with customers. You achieve fit by creating a clear connection between what matters to customers and how your products, services, and features ease pains and create gains. Great value propositions target essential customer jobs, pains, and gains, and do so extremely well. Your customer profile may contain countless jobs, pains, and gains, but your value map highlights which ones you intend to focus on. But don't forget, an outstanding value proposition can still fail if your business model is flawed. Successful companies embed outstanding value propositions in scalable and profitable business models. Use the value proposition canvas to create products and services that customers want. Get started at strategizer.com.
So this is another framework that we will use to, if you have an example product that you want to try out and see how it meets the customer gains. Essentially, the reason for doing all this is you can drive these frameworks within your organizations and make sure that wherever you are, you can facilitate those things as well, right? That's the idea. Any questions on that? Is that clear? Value proposition canvas, where it is applicable compared to business model canvas? Okay, one more framework we'll look at, which is the customer experience journey. What are all the aspects? So here they talk about 2 parts. One is the different phases of the customer experience, and within each phase they talk about 9 key steps that you need to consider to evaluate each phase. And when I talk about my example, I'll also talk about how we went around the world. Many of us went around the world to meet many of the customers to see what they do, how they do, and what is their current state, what's their future state, and we evaluated what all steps we need to take to enable this digital transformation. Okay, let's just look at that.
From MadPal, and today I'll be showing you how to create customer journey maps. Journey maps are a visual interpretation of an individual's relationship with an organization, service, product, or brand over time and across channels. A journey map helps us explore answers to the what-ifs that arise during research and conceptual design. They should include items like personas, a timeline, the emotions being felt by customers, touch points, and channels where the interactions are taking place. So how does one create a customer journey map? There are 9 key steps. Number 1, review the goals for the product or service. Number 2, gather our research. Some of my favorite research methods include customer interviews, contextual inquiry, customer surveys, customer support logs, web analytics, social media, and competitive intelligence. Number 3, generate a list of customer touchpoints and the channels on which those touchpoints occur. For example, the touchpoint could be pay a bill, and the channels associated with that touchpoint could be pay online, pay in person, or pay via mail. Number 4, conduct an exercise called an empathy map. Empathy maps depict the various facets of a persona and his or her experiences in a given scenario. The goal of the empathy map is to get a sense of how it feels to be that customer in this experience. Number 5, brainstorm with what we call lenses. This means we generate ideas in a short period of time with words representing key concepts, brand attributes, or mindsets that help us look at a problem in a different way. Number 6, complete an affinity diagram where we organize ideas and find cohesion in the team's concepts. It helps us focus on the right solutions for this audience. Number 7, this is the part you've been waiting for, sketching the journey. This is where we put together all the ideas the team generated for how to improve the future customer journey. Get creative on how you lay it out. There's no one way of sketching a customer journey. Number 8, refine and digitize. If visual design isn't your strong suit, consider collaborating with someone who can turn your journey map into an impressive artifact. And lastly, number 9 is to share them with zeal. Shout from the rooftops and display them prominently in common areas. That's all. I hope you found this useful, and best of luck in creating your own journey maps.
So, that's the customer experience journey. And when you create all these journey map for all the steps, you go through each one of these steps, and we have a different way of doing some of these things. By when they say all these different options where you can pay a bill different ways, each one of them have a different set of operational support systems that are required. How do you build those? How do you enhance those? Those are all the work that we will do in terms of creating a value stream map from what is expected to how it is implemented. And that's the whole process about the transformation. Any questions on that one? Yes?
What's the relationship, I guess, between the customer experience journey and the value proposition mechanics?
Thank you for asking that. So, each one is more digging deep into one part of the things. Just like how the business model canvas was more digging deep into the value proposition aspect, the customer experience journey is more digging deep into the customer aspect of the value proposition. There are many times we just assume that there is a product that we just sell it to a customer and we are done with it. That's not true. How does the customer discover this product? How does the customer use this product? How do they work through the life cycle of that product? How do they dispose of? Everything we want to understand about the customer and how they use the product through this customer experience journey. If we don't do this analysis, we'll only have a superficial view of what the customer wants. So this is going through these 9 key steps. For each one of the steps, in that journey is very important, and that's what customer experience journey brings us. And yeah.
Curious about I think it's step 8 on the digitization, or we're going to get into that later. The digitization step for the.
We will do a little bit more on the digitization because we will look at the technologies that are driving all these things as part of the step 2 of the journey. Okay, we'll look at, let me conclude this.
I have a question, real quick.
Yeah.
So, in terms of this model canvas is made of different components, right? Whether it's value proposition or the customer piece of the UI or whatever. Do you have a traditional role, ROLE, that maps to who's really facilitating each of those components? Because you can't have just one person, I don't think, that would have everything, right? And be able to do everything. So it's probably made a team. Something you mentioned earlier about facilitating. Can you facilitate, build this model?
Yes.
So do you have something that maps, well, this part of the canvas is traditionally done by this person that has this role versus the other?
So right now, all of these are generally driven by a sort of a program manager kind of thing. Or then what happens is in many organizations, external consultants come in to drive each one of them. For example, in our case in Cisco, we hired an external consulting company that drove us through the value proposition aspects and through the customer experience journey aspects.
I mean, even within that, you have one entity, one consulting company, they probably have different expertise to drive different components of that model, right?
Yes, you should be familiar. The people that are familiar with all these things will be able to drive that. And this is what some of the courses like the one in Stanford that I took trained us on to understand how to drive that kind of, that journey, that experience within the organization. So generally it's somebody that is aware of it, that has done this many times before, that needs to drive, but there isn't a specific named role for that. But a named role would be a generic program manager could drive that thing. Yes?
So I guess the question is it like one person or is it like a team of people?
Oh,
that actually
it is definitely not one person.
Exactly.
It is a lot larger than a team of people actually, yes. Definitely.
and
It's more
expertise
than.
in each of the components.
How the customer understands, how should they evolve over a period of time? Is it that it is expected or assumed or how is it?
So customer understanding also evolves.
Because this, what you are talking here, may not be
Static.
in so many other countries. It can happen. Because the customer evolution, it would be a necessity for this.
Customer evolution is necessary.
Yes. Understanding, in terms of understanding, the customer has to evolve to accept all these things, to learn, get information and do it.
So one of the things in the customer experience journey is to educate the customer by interacting with them and working with them to see what is it you really want. Because most of the time we see that whatever customer says that they want is really not in the end what they want. There is a lot of difference.
That means if the customer doesn't get involved to a level of expectation, this model will fail.
Yeah, so the journey is actually evolving the customer as well into understanding what they really want from their perspective. If you look at what's happening with IoT, it has taken quite a while for IoT to be adopted widely in the world. I mean, we've been talking about IoT for 8 years now, right? Only now people are trying to understand what is expected because IoT was all about technology, but IoT is all about the outcome. What the customer, how does the customer benefit from it? And unless you make the customer be aware of what they really want, what they can gain from this, IoT is not going to be successful. And that evolution is necessary. Yes. Okay. I know just 2 more minutes, actually 5 more minutes before we break. Is that?
I'm going to give you 7.
7, okay. All right. Okay, so we will walk through one more framework before we go for a break. And that is the design thinking framework. This is a big deal in Stanford actually. Stanford's D School came up with this word design thinking for creative problem solving. All of the things that we do in customer experience journey, walking through all those things, wherever a human is involved, you need the empathy aspects and you need the design thinking. So it's a cognitive process from which the design concepts emerge. It's unlike analytical thinking, where it is, analytical thinking is just you have a cause, you have an effect, and you just go through the process. Design thinking needs more creativity in it. So there is no limit on a brainstorming phase. We saw brainstorming in the customer experience journey, right? That brainstorming has to be through this kind of a design thinking process. And it's applied where human is involved. We talked about that. Let's watch a brief video to succinctly explain the concept of design thinking. There are lots of courses, even on internet. There is a 90-minute crash course that D School is giving. There is a 3-month course that MIT is giving. I took 2 courses on design thinking, one on the prototyping aspects of it, and the other one is testing and implementation aspects of it. You can see that there are 5 phases in the basic part of design thinking, and then there are additional steps from the implementation perspective, and a lot of practical implementation was there in what we did in the Stanford classes. Let's look at that brief video and then pause for questions.
Have you noticed that the world is full of problems? There are big, hairy problems like poverty and disease, and small annoyances like misplacing your keys. However, the geniuses at Stanford have come up with a process that will broaden your perspective and help you create better solutions, no matter the type of problem. This process is called design thinking, and it's here to change the way you tackle problems. Design thinking encourages people to explore new alternatives, creating options that had not existed before. Design thinking is successful because it focuses on the needs of the user. It's more than just good ergonomics, it's about understanding the context and culture of the stakeholders involved. This understanding is found using direct observation and qualitative data, which produces stories that people can really empathize with. Once the research is conducted, the problem solver is more apt to define what the real problem is. After diagnosing the true problem, it's time to ideate or brainstorm new ideas without the constraints of existing solutions. Because design thinkers learn by doing, these radical ideas are then made into simple prototypes that test possible outcomes. Rapid prototyping speeds up the innovation process because we only learn about the quality of our ideas when we test them in the real world. The process of ideating, prototyping, and testing is repeated early on so that mistakes are quick and cheap and ultimately lead to success. So, why design thinking? The process provides a method and a unifying language for multidisciplinary collaboration, leading to greater creativity and better solutions faster. Suddenly, the world's problems are simple and manageable with design thinking.
So, design thinking is a process that is undertaken in every phase, wherever we want to do. We are going to talk about some little bit about value stream mapping and all. Everywhere you need to go through the design thinking process. And that it's a way of problem solving. And it's not just about how the product is, it's also about how the product works. So it's not just about looks of product, that kind of thing, it's how you make it work as well. So all aspects can be solved by adopting what's the design thinking process, because wherever human is involved, that's what you need to solve, okay? So I will leave with this next slide, which we will come back to talk about after the break. This is about the technologies that are driving digital transformation. The new technologies that everybody needs to embrace, that's driving this new way of doing things. I'll leave this slide on. You can take a look at it and discuss among yourselves, and then when we come back, I would like you to talk about how you see these technologies improving in your work environments. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Some really interesting concepts and ideas. Get us all thinking a little bit about how we're going to solve problems and address issues too. I really appreciate that. I think you've got a quality presentation here. They're making a lot of us think a different way about how we actually approach the issues at work, you know. So I appreciate that. We're going to take a short break for a while. It's 7:10 right now. We're breaking a little to be done by in time for our wrap up at 8:15, right? Okay, that's one of the benefits we have coming to know, or meeting with a bunch of project managers. Time is a big thing for us, okay? All right.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, we had a break. Did anybody think about all these technologies that are driving the new digital transformation? Anybody wants to share something that you think in your organization, how these technologies are driving new way of doing things for, let's say, digital marketplace or digital platforms or anything at all? Any new innovative opportunities? Yeah?
So I came from a company, a insurance company, where they were using AI to detect when somebody called in for a claim. When a customer calls in a claim, and they have a mechanism to actually detect whether they're lying or not. So that's an example of use of AI that transform the way they do business and how they distribute claims. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Actually, AI is a really big thing that's going on. I myself my company is located in Plug and Play, and almost half the companies do something or the other with AI. As Andrew says from Stanford, he says AI is the new electricity. Every company is going to adopt AI for one thing or the other. Our company itself is doing something in AI from image processing perspective. We have a CNN that detects the presence of a human and sending alerts only when a human is present. Because today's security systems are unsuccessful because most of the people turn their security systems off because you get too many alerts. So what we do is to take that feed, process it through the AI, machine learning algorithms to CNN, and give you the alerts that are only appropriate for you, which is a human presence alert, right? So, talking about insurance, our company also pitches for the InsurTech events, and we see most insurance companies are also embracing AI in a big way. Claims processing, whatnot, everything they use AI now. So it's a big thing. AI is driving a lot of digital transformation. Yes?
What I don't see, and I know it's a very specialized still development, is quantum computing, quantum computers, and how they will strategically be used in some of these areas, particularly where we get into massive amounts of data, quick computing, and any comments on quantum computers?
Yeah, so from the end user perspective, that's used in the big data analytics processing. It can also be used to run your CNNs, the neural networks, right? So it's the technology platform, but these are a little bit more towards user facing, customer facing. But yes, agree. You know, big data analytics and chatbots, natural language processing, the conversational personal assistants, everybody is using that now. Everybody wants to use them. Blockchain, well, you might have seen Bitcoin going down, Ethereum is not being successful, but the technology behind that, blockchain technology, is solid. We haven't seen all the results from adopting blockchain, but there are a few companies in plug and play also that are taking up blockchain-based applications. Cloud, of course, is household, company hold kind of thing. Everybody is on the cloud. Everybody uses cloud. All the mail, everything is on the cloud right now. Dropbox, or people are using all these things knowingly or unknowingly. Software as a service, subscriptions, very common. All the platform, infrastructure as service, all of these are immersive experiences. Augmented reality, virtual reality are all very important, especially in the retail environments. Lots of work is going on in that space. IoT, we talked about it. Robotic process automation, the driverless cars, all of these are driving the new API economy, new digital economy. So we'll talk about step 3 here, the next step. I'll walk through a few of these slides very quickly, more from a lean perspective. We'll not dwell very deep into this because this is an intro set of slides for the lean aspects. How many of you know what the Toyota Way is all about? 1, 2. Yeah. So it's all about lean principles and how you adopt them, how you apply them in your organization. There are 14 principles. In fact, all of these principles in one way or the other have been applied in whatever we are talking about, the value stream mapping, what we talk about, when we talk about a creative way of problem solving. That includes what we are talking about in lean here. Anybody who wants to know more about that? There's a lot of material on that. Do you want to tell something about the 14 principles?
Basically, the lean principles. Because lean principles where the waste is a focus. Every kind of waste, whether it is material, material, processes, is supposed to be removed from the entire assembly and manufacturing lines.
Yeah, so lean is all about flow. How you can create flow, remove unevenness, remove all waste so that you can efficiently translate from whatever you wanted to do and achieve that. Right? That's all about lean. There are 7 types of waste that you need to avoid, all those kind of things. So I had that in my previous Agile and Lean presentation. So I'm not going to talk more about that, but that's That's essentially what are all these principles talk about. There is a part about thinking long term, creating the flow, making sure that the people aspects are considered, the leaders, the engineers, everybody are trained, that kind of thing. So, and then going out to the workspace and making sure you observe what you want to implement, kind of thing. That's what you see here, the Gemba walk that we talked about. There are a lot of lean terms that are all taken from Japanese. So if you read the lean literature, it's riddled with all those Japanese terms. Because they did a lot of amazing work, especially in Toyota, in 60s and 70s. So. So, more about lean, as you see, by reducing waste, we improve flow, or creating flow, we eliminate waste, these kind of things. Use all these lean techniques to create a lean digital enterprise. That's the essence that I wanted to bring up as part of this slide. Even for doing our value stream mapping your business layer to underlying technologies for implementing digital transformation, you need to keep that in consideration, the lean aspects. And so value stream mapping is a lean technique to document, analyze, and improve the flow of information for a product or service. So how do you do that? You can see the 4 quadrants here talking about defining the product family and customer persona. We talked about that from the value proposition canvas and customer experience journey, knowing about it, where we are today, where we want to go, and then our execution plan, how do we map that? That's the whole thing about the value stream mapping. So, of course, there needs to be metrics on how we are doing, how we do the execution. Okay. Little bit more on the value stream mapping. How value flows in the organization. You saw at the highest level, the strategy wise, you decompose, bring it down, connect it to what the customer needs to do, what are all the business processes, and how it relates to the digital aspects of things. So there is a business capability implementation, mapping down to agile development, because it's all about digital process. Customers, working with them. So this is the initial value mapping that you do between the business process and the customer. That's the one that we talked about, the customer experience journey, value proposition, business model canvas, and those kind of things. And then how they relate to agile development. We'll talk a little bit more on how do we implement that through scaled agile framework and other agile techniques. And agile itself and the DevOps aspects relate to how you interact with the customer from the requirements perspective. And so all of these, when we talk about agile and DevOps and all, they are actually value stream mapping. It's just that because we do them so often, they are repeated so often, we have come up with a name, how to do that, we have codified it very well. And that's what Agile and DevOps is all about. So this connection is what we need to establish in our organization, saying what we do, how it relates to the highest level of business analysis, strategy, right? Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more on scaling across multiple teams, and that's through the scaled agile implementation. Again, actually working out some of these steps, we'll do it in the workshop on Saturday. So we talked about the value stream mapping in a generic way. You bring the design thinking, the lean concepts, and the agile together to relate what you want to do from the strategy perspective to the implementation. That's what I want to bring up here, essentially. They are all coming together through this value stream mapping the value from end customer perspective. The customer-centric approach is what is driving all these initiatives, and we have to understand the requirements. I don't know if we discussed this here or not. We see 50% of the projects fail because of either missing requirements or misunderstood requirements. I have another presentation somewhere where I go through a detailed analysis of small projects, medium projects, large projects, what percentage of them fail because of these kinds of considerations. And when you embrace Agile, how that success rate increases, kind of thing, right? So missing and misunderstood requirements are a big factor in project failures. We saw in the other value proposition canvas video, 7 out of 10 projects or features are not required by the customers. That's one observation. Here, from some of the things that I had found, 64% of the features are rarely used in most of our products. So we spend all that time in building these kinds of products, and if 70% of it is not successful, that's a pity, right? So we need to have good engagement with the customer to understand their requirements. Then technology collaboration. We saw all these new technologies coming in. It's really hard to implement any new technology when we don't know what it's going to give. So you need to have a way to quantify all those expectations, risks and all those, and get it implemented. So you want to do rapid development, but at the same time, you need to make sure that it's successful. And here is a small matrix. This is actually called Stacy matrix, which talks about when you have your requirements on one axis and the technologies on another axis. If everything is known in terms of technology and requirements, it's a simple project. Even simple waterfall techniques will work. Whereas when each one is high, when you go to the right and to the top of the scale, projects become more complicated. When the requirements are less known, technology is less known, you need to embrace Agile in these situations. And even in complex situations, you need to embrace Agile. If you are not able to, you'll end up having a chaotic project. So Agile, it fits into these two complex and complicated areas of implementation. So when we get excellence in execution, when we have better estimation of your projects, when you have better risk management, and Agile has its own way of estimating things. You don't estimate everything right up front. You gradually estimate things as you know more about it, as it is absolutely required for implementation, and move forward with Agile. So I'm not talking more about Agile here, but that's how that's an important aspect in implementation. Any questions on that?
What you say, progressive elaboration of the requirement.
Yes. It is true, but you have already given an estimate on when you are going to complete your waterfall project, and if your progressive elaboration is going to bring up more things, creeping requirements, then you don't know how to handle them.
That means the project is misconceived as a simple project. In reality, it is a complicated or complex.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, did we skip a slide? Oh. Okay, so another aspect of execution is DevOps. How many of you are familiar with DevOps? I know Agile, most of you will be familiar. How many of you are familiar with DevOps? How many of you think that DevOps is an important aspect in your organization? Great. So, for those who don't know what DevOps is, the front end of understanding the requirements and working with the customer is good with Agile. But you develop a product and you cannot quickly deploy it to your customer and get the feedback from them, then it's not successful anymore because the feedback loop is not complete. DevOps is a way that you collaborate with your customer by providing continuous integration, release, deployment, testing, monitoring and deploying, and resourcing. But anyway, continuous deployment, continuous testing, continuous delivery, these are all very important from being able to be successful in your Agile journey, in your implementation journey. So that's DevOps here. Any questions on DevOps? DevOps has, the term DevOps became more popular since probably around 2013 or so. And it's, unless you are able to deploy your products very quickly, Facebook, for example, or Google, or any of Netflix, they have hundreds of deployments per day. Amazon, different features keep getting incrementally deployed. It's no longer like how when we were back in 2000, 2005 and all. We used to have a release go out once in 3 months, once in 6 months, once in maybe 2 months at the earliest. Having multiple deployments per day? How is that possible? That's possible because of the processes that you put in to be able to deploy every day, multiple times. That's DevOps. Scaling. We need to scale across multiple teams. If you don't, each one is misaligned with the other, then each one will nullify the effects of the other. When you walk through the customer experience journey, this is something that we also followed in our example. We'll talk about that. There are various aspects of the customers experiencing our product. We cannot say, I'll have the product ready, but I don't have anything for them to consume. I don't have anything to market it to them. I don't have anything for them to understand the ecosystem of how the product needs to be used. We need to develop things for all those areas. And so we need to have teams engaged in not just product development, but in marketing, in sales, in all those, any other infrastructure that's required to push the product out. You need to have teams doing that. And that's the alignment that we want to do. And Scaled Agile also provides for all those things to come together in an organization. Hundreds of people can be working together to make things happen through Scaled Agile mechanisms. Okay. This is the other aspect of scaling across the organization. This is not just the team-wise scaling I'm talking about. Here, how do you make sure that most of the programs in the organization are aligned with your Agile and DevOps strategy? How your business model, when it is trickled down into actual implementation, how do you get everybody to embrace the same processes that you have adopted? We want to get this new way of doing things bolted to existing programs, not how it's a research project. Let's give these 1 or 2 projects do this kind of new technology and others are doing their own thing. It won't work because you need some critical mass. Of course, you cannot have everybody embrace everything that is new. We want to make sure that we focus on strategic programs, but at the same time, it cannot be, there are only some cool kid teams that are doing these ones and then legacy teams that are not doing any of these new technologies. Okay. And then we have to learn iteratively, make sure everything delivers value to customer, and that's what DevOps provides for. Okay. So this concludes the step 3 of the journey, where we'll talk about the highest level value stream mapping and some of the concepts that are being used in actual implementation. And the next one is the step 4, where we'll talk about Scaled Agile framework. How do we bring that into action? How many of you are familiar with Scaled Agile framework? Safe. Few of them. Okay. So they have a very good website, scaledagileFramework.com. All the concepts are described there. It's a great tool to have. It's a great tool to embrace. It's a great tool to propagate, great framework to propagate in your organization. If you're not familiar, just read up on that. This is a picture that's taken from Scaled Agile Framework website. It's a playbook that they have talked about. How do you embrace mapping the safe trains for your value streams that you have created from coming down from the business, right? So identify a value stream. What are all the systems that support them? Who are all involved in them? How do you create development value streams? Means each of those value streams, each of those business capabilities relate to multiple digital capabilities. This is where how the digital, how do you come down to digitization? You'll come there. And then you realize each of those value streams in multiple agile release trains. These terms will make sense if you have been familiar with Scaled Agile Framework, but it will take a long time for me to give the whole overview of that. There is one slide that I'll talk about which will give the higher level view of things. So here are a few examples of different operational value streams, and then how development value streams map to each one of them for getting things done. And then you take these development value streams and then map them to what you want to implement. So this is the higher level view of Scaled Agile Framework. I only brought a view which is 2 layers here. There are 4 layers that you can talk about in Scaled Agile. What this shows at the lowest level is the teams that are involved in getting things done. This right, the axis towards the right is the time scale, and there are multiple teams that are involved in getting a program going, right? You bring them all together through an agile release train. Here we only show one agile release train for one value stream. The arrows that you see behind is it's a value stream. Here they are mapping one agile release train to one value stream. You can have multiple agile release trains, multiple teams, multiple sets of teams getting things done for one value stream. And you can have multiple value streams in an organization to get your complete business strategy implemented, right? So this is only 2 layers shown here for lean enterprises. This is called Essential Safe. There is the portfolio layer as well in Scaled Agile Framework. I suggest you walk through that website in more detail if you want to. And again, on Saturday we are going to cover more of this in the workshop. And then, of course, we collect all these metrics once we complete the implementation, and that provides us the feedback. So this sort of brings an end to the execution part of it. I will walk through an example that we did all of these things in an implementation in Cisco for one of the products that was very successful in many ways. Any questions before I get to that? Okay, here is a crowded picture. You can see this picture, customer experience framework. This is again, we had some consultants come in to help us navigate through this. How does a customer walk through each one of these phases in interacting with our product? Mind you, ours was a software only product. It was a SaaS service, and all our sales and marketing and everything in Cisco was oriented towards hardware and pushing out products kind of thing. Our subscription way of doing things was a little different. So we had many of us go through, visit many customers around the world and get their feedback and build this chart. And here underneath I have removed them so intentionally. We had those 9 key steps that we talked about in that video. We used all that to come up with, for each of these phases, what do we need to do? How do each one of them relate to achieving our objectives? And then each one of them, whichever related to building different products for different phases, different times, we had teams set up, and at every sprint we were trying to align what needs to be done, or every few sprints we tried to align them to get that product going. In fact, some of the work that we did, this was about a year's project, and we sort of implemented everything that was there in the App Dynamics product. They were there for 8 years, and we could implement a lot of that within a year and transform Cisco's all internal processes to map to this new digital way of doing things. And once we did that, we had all these metrics in each of different areas to analyze where we were, how we were doing with respect to our goals. So this is just an example of how you can implement all that, whatever we talked about from a business transformation perspective to digital transformation and underlying execution as well. So we had Scaled Agile framework that was being used in aligning all the different teams in getting the product out. Okay? Any thoughts, any questions? Yes?
What were the challenges that you faced in implementing this? Because nobody likes change.
It was a lot of change. It was cultural change as well. Our VP and his boss, they were very good friends, and we had the support from the highest level. So that's why it was successful. And in fact, because this was a flagship product from Cisco's software-only type of a service that we really wanted to push. Of course, WebEx and other services were there, but they were more traditional services coming into new environment. This was more from the ground up. We built a digital service. So there were a lot of challenges, but because we had the support at the highest levels, we were pretty successful. We could pull strings in all different areas and get things done in all the areas of customer interaction with Cisco.
As you said, it's a top-down thing. Have you experienced a bottom-up surge after that?
Bottom-up surge in the sense?
Surge in the sense that people accept it and they start buying it, and not only buying it, improving it.
Yeah, actually because of this, we ended up acquiring AppDynamics. That was a big acquisition into Cisco, one of the biggest acquisitions in the recent years. Okay? I'm right on time. So, I have a final summary chart, but before that, I'm open for any questions.
What kind of metrics did you use to measure how you were doing on this project?
So, good question. Thank you. So, if you see here, we had different levels of metrics. The program-related metrics, we had customer experience-related metrics, we had from the product side metrics, and we had metrics all across as well. We had different things to measure how each one of the areas were doing end to end.
Do you have any specific examples of metrics that you used in any one of them?
Well, from the program metrics itself, you know, when you are doing an agile program, there is all this how you're doing in terms of velocity, how you're doing in terms of feature development and all. Some of them are very low level, team-based metrics. Then there are program-based metrics. Then we also had metrics that were relating to how quickly we can turn around a feature when it is defined from the product management, and how quickly we can get it to the customer, the full life cycle of that. It was a difficult thing because you had to get not only Agile, you had to get all the DevOps thing implemented as well, and the customer should be able to use it and give feedback. So that whole cycle we could measure based on these things. Okay. Finally, actually from Agile IT team, we actually go through all these steps for you to be able to transform your programs into digital and embrace all the Agile and DevOps techniques. So we covered all these things. We do make sure that you use all the right framework for your problem to solve. I just thought of talking about this chart here that I really liked. What used to be called as lean management in the 80s and 90s, it evolved into agile development in 2000s, and it evolved into lean startup. And you will see some differences in terminologies between agile development and lean startup. What used to be product roadmap became a business model canvas. So this will actually help you connect the two pieces together. What used to be called as product vision, we now call it as product market fit. So as a startup, we do product market fit. As a big company, we do product vision. We have a release plan. Here we have a minimum viable product to deploy. Usually with teams and all, we have sprints and sprint reviews and all. In a smaller startup or in a lean startup environment, it's a pull system. It's a Kanban, and we pivot very quickly based on the feedback that we get. A user story and definition of done in Agile is somewhat replaced with hypothesis. We hypothesize what the customer would want, and then based on our implementation and deployment, we get the feedback and we validate that learning very quickly. So in Agile we used to have red-green deployments and refactoring. Now it's learn, measure, build. So like this, different terminologies. It's just that in lean startup environment, the same kind of concepts have accelerated and become very crisp in what you want to implement. So it's an evolution from Agile development, the lean startup. I don't know if you guys have read a book by Eric Ries. He started the concept of lean startup, and it's not a very easily readable book, but if you get the chance, just take a look at it. But there is a lot of material on lean startup, and that's the new thing. That it's not new anymore, it's already almost 8 years old, but that's the new wave in terms of where Agile is going. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, Frank, there's one thing to touch on as project managers. We either lead or participate in retrospectives as part of projects. I'd like to get your take on retrospectives and these kind of safe Agile, maybe your example with Cisco. Could you touch on that briefly?
Yeah, retrospectives are very important, absolutely. Many times we don't do justice to retrospectives because it sort of becomes boring. People have done so much and then, oh, one more thing to do. I think there is a book on 40 ways to do retrospectives. It's a good book to take a look at. It brings creativity in how you do retrospectives in your organizations, with your teams. Retrospectives are very important. We need to learn from each one of these. In fact, please give your feedback, because I will learn from that feedback for my next round, whatever I'm going to speak. Retrospectives are very important. Thank you for bringing that. Yes. Anything else? Okay, great. So I hope to see some of you on Saturday for digging deep into each one of these frameworks and how you can actually internalize this whole mechanism of business transformation, how to drive it in your organization, how to connect it with the digital transformation, and how to connect it with your actual execution and implementation. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Outstanding. Come on back up here. On behalf of PMI Silicon Valley, we're going to give you a little token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Great. Did you guys really enjoy it, huh? Good job. And once you're going to send the charts, so they'll have the charts. Okay. So those of you wanting it, they'll have copies of his information too. So this was really good. He's finishing on time. So what we're going to try to do now, each of you have packets of information. Excuse me, packets